So the next thing we need to do is combine those sub-assemblies into the overall final assembly of the robot arm. Okay, so we're going to join our base assembly, our gripper assembly, and our arm assembly to form the overall robot arm. So for this one, you're going to need to find the 4mm steel shaft that's in your fastener kit. So it'll be the same place where you got all the M4 bolts we've been using. Okay, and that's what's going to form the hinge for your lower arm. Right? So there's no bolt holding that in place. It's just a shaft that's going to be pinned in there, and it's going to be held from each end by the motors. Right? So for now, we're just going to push it in place, and then the motors will hold it later. So to line everything up, you need to make sure that your servo slot here on this side is on the same side as the arm here at the back. Okay? So we're going to line that up, and we're going to just push this shaft in so that it pins the lower arm through this bit here. You will need to just maybe use your screwdriver or an Allen key or something just to push that in. So you just want it barely held. Okay. So somewhere there. Okay. So that's step 14 if you're following the PDF instructions. I just wanted to just check. Okay. So we leave the gripper to one side for a second. So the next we want to do is start attaching our servo motors for the lower arm and the upper arm. Okay. So if we turn this around, so this arm on the base is now further away from me, right? It's on the far side. I'm going to do the one on the other side first. So we need our servo motor that's already set to midpoint, 90 degrees, and we need our little acrylic servo plate. Okay. So you're going to put the servo wire down through that hole, and you're going to slip the servo blade over the servo motor. You need to make sure that the notch in the servo lines up with the wire, right? That's there to allow you to get this into place. So try and get it lined up straight. And if you put it on an angle, it'll get stuck. So get it on straight, and then it should just slip down over it. Okay. If it is sticking on you and you're still putting it in straight, try peeling off the label on the servo. Okay. So we're going to position our servo into this now with the wire coming out the top. Okay. So it's going to press in there, and we're then going to put bolts through the servo plate to hold that in place. Okay. Before we do that, we need to put on the little arm on our servo. So these will be in the bag that your servos came in. Okay, and you're going to go for one of the ones that has just a single arm, right? So not the double one. Okay. So we're going to put this on. Again, the motor's set to midpoint, so we want this to be roughly midpoint. So if my arm is rotating from, so this is for this arm, okay, the small little driver arm. That's going to be rotating kind of this way, right? So for now, for the midway, we're just going to put it there, around 45 degrees, right? We're going to change this a little bit later when we're doing the program anyway, right? We can play with this and make sure we have our angle set right, okay? So when you're pushing that in, you need to get it into this orange servo or orange drive arm as well. Okay, so that's what's going to hold that in, and that's going to sit in on the shaft that we just pushed in as well. Okay, so that should line up like that, and then we're going to push that shaft back in that other little bit so that it's now pinning that orange one as well. Okay. So now what we need to do is hold that servo motor in place, and we're going to do that with M3 screws. Okay, so 2 M3s, just the short ones. So you're going to feed them in from the front of the plate into the base part. Okay, and in the base part in here, okay, so let me show you on a spare one. There's these little grooves for the nuts inside. So you just want to try and get the nut into place in there. Right? Hold it in that slot for a second. Right? This does take a little bit of effort to just get everything lined up. You're then going to use your Allen key to thread the screw in through that, and hopefully it'll catch it and put it into place. Okay. If that nut doesn't go into the groove, it doesn't really matter. If you can just hold it enough so that you can get a grip on it with the screw, then you need very little force to hold these in place. And in fact, if you put a lot of force on these, you're going to break the perspex sheet. Okay, so you just need enough to hold the servo in place and stop it twisting when you try and turn the arm. Okay, so that one hasn't really went into the groove, but the motor is held. Okay, so that's fine. So if we turn to the other side, you're going to do exactly the same. You're going to get another servo motor. Again, it's already set to 90 degrees. We're going to get a single arm. Okay. I could bolt these. I could use a little screw that came with them to hold them in place, but there's no real need, so I have skipped that step. Anyone who's kind of watching, I just put that in. I just slipped it on and put it in without using the screw. So they can't go anywhere once they're in place because of this design. So what we're going to do now is we're putting that servo on pointing straight towards the wire. Okay? And you're going to line it up like that. So you're going to lift this arm here so that it's straight, and you're going to slot it in there. Okay? So that's roughly straight up. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay? A couple of degrees either way is not going to make any difference. You're then going to slip your second acrylic sheet plate on over that. Again, make sure that you could have done this, and probably should have done it before you put the servo in place. If you've made that mistake like I did, you just take it off and put it back on again. Okay, so we're going to put our M3 bolts in. I'm not going to push them fully through, because if I just leave them and don't put them in first of all, I'll probably be able to get the nuts in place easier. It was probably the bolts that were stopping those going in place. Okay, so if you're finding that any of this is in your way, you can rotate these gently. They are going to turn the servo motors while you do that, so don't use sudden movements or you'll shear the gears inside the little cheap servo motors that we're using. Okay, they're plastic gears. They won't stand up to rough handling. Okay, so now I need to do this front one, so I'm just going to rotate this back a little bit. Okay, so that motor now is no longer at 90 degrees, but that's fine because I already have it lined up with my arm. Okay, I've lined it up with the lower arm of the kit. That's the only reason we wanted the servo motor set to 90 degrees, so that we knew that when we set the arm at 90, or vertical in this case, it would line up. Okay, so once you have them all connected, it doesn't matter if we move them a little. So again, I'm going to tighten, but I'm not going to tighten to the point that this is bending. Right? Probably tighten the other side a little too much, so be careful. Right? It's just enough to stop them twisting out. That's perfect there. Okay? So that's my two servos on. The next step is to add a M4 screw to this here. Okay, so turn it around maybe so you can see it a bit better. So to this last link, so the screw goes into the blue part there, and you can put your washer on. And then again, this is a lock nut you're going to use.
Actually, I probably could. Let me just check the instructions. I probably could have turned it on the other way. Might have made it easier.
Yeah. So if you're following the instructions, it does actually tell you to put it this way. And then I'll put on the brush. So it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered the other way if I was able to get it in place. It would be fine, but obviously there's a reason I did it the other way first of all. So this one is a lock nut, so you're not going to be able to hold it by hand. You're going to have to get the spanner. And same procedure as before for this. You're going to tighten it till it's locked in place, and then you're going to loosen it back a little bit so that it's free to rotate. That's one way of doing it, or you can just judge it. So I've tightened that till it was locked, and I've moved it a little bit, and it is loose. Okay, probably a little too loose, but it's not going to matter there. Okay, so that's my robot arm. The only bit left to do in the assembly is to connect in my gripper. Okay. So you're going to need 2 more M4 nuts, or bolts, sorry. This one. Okay, so you're going to put this upper arm of the robot in between these two and push this into the lower holes. And this one lines up there. So you want to put the face of this blue part, in my case, to the blank face of the orange. Okay, and we're going to try and get a washer on some of these. So the top one will take a washer, there's plenty of room. Okay, so you're not going to have a lot of room to tighten on this one. Just make sure that if you can, that the lock nut is the plastic thread is engaged. So that one is. This one, the screw we're using is too short. Okay, so we should have a longer screw. So we're not actually going to be able to thread this in enough, I think, to catch the nylon on the lock nut. So we're just going to put it there for now and hope it holds. You can tighten it a little bit. You can judge yourself, so you don't want to feel friction as you're moving, so that one is probably okay there. Okay, so if I was building these and putting them up for display, right, or for long-term use, I'd put a cable tie here on this one, right, just to hold that in place for when you're using it. But you're going to be taking these apart, so we didn't include cable ties. But if you want, you could put sellotape or something around that. So just don't pull too much on that wire, leave a loop around and put a bit of sellotape there on that arm, right? Don't catch the link or anything, just around that green arm of the wire, and have the wire come out there at the back. So in your kits, you should have also got an extender, okay? So your extender is for this one, right? But it's not quite long enough to get to the Arduino. So you'll have an extender, right? And this one is black, red, and white, right? But the ones you have are the same color as your servo. So you're going to connect it in such a way that obviously the brown is connected to brown, red to red, and orange to orange. But for mine, it's black to brown, red to red, and white to orange. Okay? So that allows just a little bit of extra room for getting the Arduino in place. These ones are fine. Okay? So your Arduino can be connected into these now. Again, we could, if we were leaving these more permanently together, we could put some cable wrap or something around these just to make them look a little bit neater. You know, we could maybe route this wire through this one or something like that. for now, that's an assembled robot. So the little things you should check is that you have free movement. Okay, so once you have no power connected to these, the server should freely rotate. Okay, but don't force them. If they're not moving, then there's something wrong. So don't force them, and we can talk to you on the day. This one, don't try and force. You won't be able to. Okay, so but the other ones will move, and it should rotate here as well. Okay, so that's an EezyBot robot arm. Okay, assembled. And these are based on the ABB pallet and robot. So this is actually based on a real robot used in industry. Okay? Thanks very much, guys.